Welcome to this Zoom discussion. Welcome also to those who are watching us on Facebook. This discussion will be on the Green Deal in the Bulgarian context. And I'd like to welcome my colleagues from ECFR, the program director, Susie Dennison, I can see her, for them, and all of you who want to listen to the English channel. I hope the English channel is working. Our discussion will be in Bulgarian. I'd like to say a few words about the technical side of our discussion. We're going to have a presentation at the beginning together with our colleague Mariya Trifonova, who is a real expert on the Green Deal. She will present data from a representative survey that we did together with Alpha Research earlier this year. And she will talk about the key issues that we believe are key issues. And then we would like to have a real discussion with all of us here, but also those of you who are following us on Facebook can ask your questions, write comments in the chat. A few words about why the ECFR decided to address this topic. Well, we work on the geopolitical dimensions of the Green Deal. This is probably the policy that has the most real geopolitical dimensions in our relations with countries like Russia, the USA, China, Saudi Arabia, and also North Africa and the Balkans. That's why we drafted a big report a few weeks ago. We published it together with the Bruegel Institute on the geopolitical aspects of the Green Deal, with a special focus on the effects on the countries that export oil and gas, and also on the so-called energy islands, energy dependencies, the dependencies on raw materials, mainly from China and also other countries. We recommend the creation of the so-called climate club, or a coalition of countries that have the political will to adopt the goals of the Green Deal. Well, of course, there are ongoing discussions already with the US and other countries. And in general, the European Union turning into a standard setter in terms of the energy transition and the creation of economies of a new type. The European Union has been in this role before. You remember the GDPR, the standards for protecting personal data, and these standards are now global standards. And the idea of the Green Deal is to shift to spread many of those standards to other countries. Well, this could be only possible if the Green Deal works within the European Union, first of all. And that's why we surveyed the 27 member states to see how they plan to implement the Green Deal. And Susie Dennison is now writing the text about this survey. And what we know already is that for Bulgaria, those results are not very good. Bulgaria is how to put it, one of the weak, so to say, links in this chain. And that's why we focused on Bulgaria, and our scope of action together with the European Climate Foundation. Well, I'm happy to welcome Julian Popov, who is our friend and consultant advisor on behalf of the European Climate Foundation. So we decided to do this project. So this is a short rationale of why the ECFR is interested in Bulgaria and the possible change in the Bulgarian position in terms of the Green Deal. We indeed want to make the best attempt for a campaign, especially during the elections and after them, in order to include the Bulgarian public in this debate and the Bulgarian political figures. As we will hear from Mariya, Bulgarian society is much more advanced than its politicians. But now, without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Mariya. Good morning. I hope you can hear me. My name is Mariya Trifonova, and I teach at the University of Sofia. I was invited by the ECFR for this presentation. I'm very happy to have this opportunity to participate in the project. Our approach to this, well, I shared my screen. I hope you can see it. I'll make it bigger. Our approach to this survey began as a bottom-up approach. We first wanted to have a snapshot of the situation, to have an idea of the attitude and perceptions in society, how people perceive those policies and whether they perceive them at all, what is their opinion of this large-scale change that lies ahead of us in the next decade. Many of the participants today are representing the NGO sector, and we believe that the connection, you serve as a connecting link. But I'd like to talk about first of all the Green Deal and how it is perceived by people, by citizens, and then we can have a discussion, because you all have the expertise, you all have information about the sectors you're representing. Well, first, a few words about how the Green Deal was presented in the media. We did a discourse analysis, and I'd like to just focus on the differences in the messages in public space at the beginning of last year and the beginning of this year. The European Green Deal and the website actually contained some negative messages, even threatening. 90% of the publications in January 2020 were very negative. As you can see, you can read them. So we have noticed some difference over the year, and it's very important because it concerns some main components of the Green Deal and the way it's going to be implemented in Bulgaria, but still there are a lot of uncertain things. But the attitude is changing. It's becoming more positive. It's now tied in with some financial prospects, concrete prospects. There's the financial dimension. And last year, the focus was on energy. And the Green Deal was mainly presented as a tool that's coming from abroad, and that would change, that would make us change our energy mix, close down thermal power plants, and lay off workers, make it hard for their families. But at the beginning of this year, we can see a positive change. We can see that more opportunities are being identified to modernize the industry, to fund other sectors like the agricultural sector, which is a important sector for the population. There's a focus on the green path, the digitalization, but still there are some negative messages persisting. So that's why it's important for us to identify the opportunities from the Green Deal and start talking about them. Because after all, this is what's important, that will that's what's going to happen unless we take measures on timely measures and start planning concrete initiatives as early as possible. Well, how were those negative messages interpreted by the citizens? Well, first, we were pleasantly surprised by the sociological poll that was conducted by Alpha Research at the beginning of this year. It showed that over 85% of the respondents think of the climate change and global warming as a serious issue, as a crisis even. And we can see a trend towards a change, towards an increase of the percentage of the population that is becoming more and more sensitive to those issues. For example, in 2019, only 80% thought that climate change was an issue. Also, we can notice that climate change is recognized as a fact that will have an impact on the citizens, on their children, on the next generation. So people feel related to the repercussions of climate change, and people are becoming sensitive to pollution, environmental protection, climate protection. So we don't see any divisions in the society on these topics. On the contrary, these topics are uniting people. So we all want to have cleaner air and climate that will not have a dramatic impact that was predicted by scientists. The ambitious goals of the European Union can be spotted amongst Bulgarian citizens. Over 75% of the people think that the goal of the European Union is meaningful. They support it. I'm talking about the goal of the European Union to reduce CO2 emissions by 2030 by 55%. But many of the respondents did not know about the concrete Bulgarian position on climate issues. And only 15% said that they knew about this policy, and 76% were not aware at all about this. All these data can be found on the website of the ECFR in detail. I just want to present on this slide the expectations in terms of the impact of the Green Deal on Bulgaria. As you can see, this issue is most often connected with expectations of higher prices of products and services, and then closing down of the coal-fired power stations, because this was the way it was, the Green Deal was presented in public space. Also, citizens are concerned about the increase of dependency, the increased dependency on natural gas, and this is logical, having in mind the intentions of the government to switch from coal to natural gas. And there are some fears among citizens that the Green Deal will provide opportunities just for a small number of people. And the positive development will not reach the all citizens. And that's why we very much hope that in today's discussion we discuss this topic: how can this idea is democratically implemented and translated into real benefits for the society. We also asked the respondents in this survey about their approval of certain policies that could result from the European Green Deal. These are potential policies, and we could see an increased approval in terms of the modernization of the coal regions and the switch to low carbon technologies for the production of energy, and increasing support for policies that are not very popular, like a ban on the import of old diesel cars, and also an increased acceptance of low carbon technologies, renewable energy sources, and 73% said they would approve a policy that would demand that each new building has a solar panel, solar roof, and it's only natural to approve a policy that protects parks, natural reserves, and also the tax on packaging that is produced from non-renewable sources, and consequently all initiatives related to circular economy, recycling of waste, and penalties for the production of the producers, the manufacturers of products that cannot be part of the circular economy.
We also asked a question about the policy in energy efficiency, because you can see in the new EU recovery plan that serious resources will be allocated for energy efficiency and renovation of buildings. And this is not the first time that we hear criticism as regards the funding of these initiatives without the participation of citizens. We wanted to check whether the participants in the survey would support any measures that would force them to participate financially and invest their own funds at preferential terms like interest-free loans with grace periods, and most of them would support such type of measures. We can see that a lot of people need more information, so an awareness raising and information campaign should go alongside the taking of such measures. And some messages from me uh, in relation to our discussion today and how we should communicate with society about the European Green Deal and its impact that we can expect from it and the opportunities it provides. Firstly, I believe it is important that we should talk and think holistically. If we speak about sectoral policies, we shouldn't forget that we're speaking of an overall transformation of our economic model, which in itself has to do with many socio-economic consequences and public acceptance. It should be clear for all of us that the future competitiveness will be determined by new technology. No matter how much we try to retain a certain traditional economic model in the country that we believe determines our competitiveness, it should be clear that the European and global competitors of our Bulgarian companies will introduce low carbon technologies, and we should think how Bulgarian companies can participate in these new innovation models and new supply chains. I think it's clear for everyone that apart from funds and support schemes closely related to the new set of policies in the Green Deal, all financial instruments will follow the priorities set in this package of policies. Financing which will reach Bulgaria with regard to the Green Deal will not be self-sufficient. It will not be probably enough for us to finance this enormous transformation which is expected of us. But the idea is to mobilize private capital and additional investment capital. The European Green Deal will also affect the regions which are now with coal, but this effect should be positive for these coal regions as well. Each municipality should have project readiness and understanding of the mechanisms which shall be followed as a result of these new climate and economic policies. The EU Green Deal is already happening. We are discussing how it not so much how it will affect us positively or negatively. We should be prepared in order to respond quickly and to take maximum advantage of the opportunities it provides so that we can identify various opportunities for us. Several topics which I would like to propose as food for thought or to be a part of today's discussion can I ask you to wrap up quickly in order to allow more time for discussion? Your time is close to up. Sorry. Yes. Firstly, I'd like us to talk about all the opportunities ahead of us, which are closer to the citizens in the sphere of energy efficiency, mobility, consumption, participation of businesses in this sector, opportunities for shortening supply chains, digitalization, and how it will affect each and every sector. What are the opportunities for improved cooperation between businesses, the academia, researchers, and innovation incubators, and the opportunities for recycling and introducing circularity in the economic model. And now I open the floor for discussion, for your participation. I welcome any ideas you may have on these topics. Great, thanks a lot. I propose that we give the floor to Julian now, who will be able to moderate the discussion as regards the data. Um, we have published them on our web page. If you'd like to have Maria's entire presentation, she can send it to you. Just give us a sign. There was a problem with the video on Facebook. We're sorry for this, but now it's okay. So for the most important part, for the discussion, the video will be okay. Julian, you have the floor. Thank you, Vessela. Thank you, Mariya, for presenting this data. This survey was very interesting. Julian, you may not have heard me, but you need to choose the Bulgarian channel so that we can hear you, all of us who are in the Bulgarian channel. Can you hear me now? Yes, perfectly. I didn't know that it's a truly international meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Vessela. Thank you, Mariya, for presenting the data of the survey. This is a very interesting survey, which sheds a light on how the Bulgarian society treats a whole group of problems. And before I start the discussion, I would very much like to set a clear distinction among four categories. They are interrelated, but one should not mistake one with the other. Of course, they are different things. One sphere of issues are climate change. Many often I hear previously we were speaking of global warming. Now you speak climate change. This is the same thing measured in different ways, but this is just one aspect. Another group of issues which shouldn't be mistaken with the first group is conventional environmental issues. The two are interrelated, but we cannot mix air pollution in the cities with climate change. These are two different, albeit connected things. Another thing I spotted in this survey was that too often people mix the various categories. The two remaining mirror issues related to the first two topics are the respective policies, the policies with regard to conventional environment preservation and the climate policies. And it would be a very good idea if we try to make this distinction in our discussion today. The survey provides a very good foundation for comments and interpretation. Where Bulgarian society is now, what political parties should engage with, what policies we should have, to what degree, and in what ratio as regards other issues as well. Some comments were made while we were performing the survey, people said people are getting poorer and poorer. People get sick with COVID. Is now the time to talk about the climate? This is a reasonable question that we could address today in our discussion. But what's most important is to have such a discussion. This is why I'm here. And I would like to give the floor to all the people who are participating. If there's anyone who is the bravest, let him or her start. Otherwise, I will start pointing at people. I can take myself the floor. I could have guessed. Uh, Please let me ask you to be brief. It would be best if we hear everyone. I'd like to limit myself to 1 or 2 minutes. I think this is the standard procedure. Thank you for allowing me to start. Let me support the data presented by Mariya Trifonova. We literally last year made a similar survey which confirms this data. Our data are more detailed because we are monitoring the subsectors in the Green Deal. And this is what I'd like to turn your attention to, that ultimately this overall transformation that we've been hearing about during the last year is not something new. Quite the opposite. These are 15 plus years. It took efforts on part of the EU and the world to have this transition gradually. But what I would like to share is that um, in the foundation of the problem is the preservation of the environment. Of course, we saw a lot of facts as regards the energy sector, economy as a whole, but this is not the only part of the Green Deal. As you know, the biodiversity strategy, the agriculture strategy from farm to fork are two main pillars of the European Green Deal, and there are many other sectors affected as well, like renewables, circular economy, hydrogen, and so on. I will stop here, but let's say that these are ambitious targets, but they are driven by forces for more than 15 years now. Thank you, Georgi. May I also have an intervention? Evgeny Kanev, present yourself briefly. My name is Evgeny Kanev. Evgeny, just choose the Bulgarian channel so that you can hear me. I can hear him. I can also hear him. I don't know why you don't hear me, Vessela. I can hear everybody. Probably his sound is not on. I can hear him as well. My name is Evgeny Kanev. I'm a doctor of economy, and I can hear him. I can also hear him. I don't know what to do, to be honest. Okay, just go on. My name is Evgeny Kanev. I'm a doctor of economy. I'm a manager of consultancy for mergers and acquisitions, which allows me to monitor what is happening in the business, which is why I was challenged by a sentence in the presentation that we need to apply and we should take part in the international supply chains in order to preserve our competitiveness. Let me say that this is just partially true. Why? Because there are three groups of companies which will be challenged by the Green Deal. The first group of companies are the companies uh, uh, which have political protections. They will adapt. They will find it hard to adapt and will have to close shop, and we will have problems with this. The second group of companies are companies which took advantage of the European funds 15 years ago and managed to participate in the international supply chains, but this competitiveness, which they will probably keep adapting to the new standards in the Green Deal, they will continue to be competitive on the basis of price and with a very low added value for our economy. Their main function will be to create jobs and to keep educated people in Bulgaria, but without an opportunity to provide better salaries for them. And the third group of companies, which is the most important one, and depending on how we will manage to encourage them, are the innovators. Companies which contribute with their innovations for the implementation of the Green Deal in the sphere of fuels, water, and so on, which, if they are encouraged to grow, they can become our champions, and they can be in the center of the supply chains and not be just a link in the supply chain for the company which should take advantage of the greatest portion of the margin. So it's important that the state encourages this third group of companies. In 3 weeks' time, I will have finance lectures to 6 innovating companies in the sphere of water. These are managers which have the knowledge about innovation, but need knowledge and encouragement on how to comply with the requirements, how to grow as successful business models. This is something missing as know-how in Bulgaria. Thank you.
Thank you, Evgeny. Thank you for driving the discussion into this direction. But this is not, of course, the only direction we're going to discuss, of course. According to the analysis of the Ministry of Environment and Waters from 2012, in order to bring the water management in Bulgaria into line with European standards, not include this money. But so this is just one aspect, and Evgeny shed some light on this, on the task that is ahead of us and the burden on the Bulgarian economy. On the other hand, this is an incredible opportunity. And there are many other dimensions as well. Dragomir, I can see Drago. Are you with us? So Dragomir Tsanev is CEO of NFECT, leading organization working on energy efficiency. So how can this survey be related to your work? Thank you. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for this discussion. Well, this is a very interesting survey, and I'd like to thank you for the roundtable. And I agree with Georgi Stefanov in the observation that the conclusions from this survey, especially those that relate to energy efficiency, is that there are programs for energy efficiency, and people's attitude to those programs is confirmed by other surveys that we recently did. And it's very much different from the official messages that we hear by decision makers, and also the messages of the strategic documents. If I'm to use this term. So obviously there is a public perception of adopting such policies, and there's a perception of participation and involvement. And to me, the most interesting thing was this contrast. So we heard the analysis of this, the survey, the media content. And it's, I'm trying to to find the answer to the question of how much the media content is determined by the topics of public interest and other interests as well, because I can't find any other reason why there's this contrast. There's this contrast. On the other hand, having those having identified those attitudes, it's very difficult to explain why in the plan for recovery resilience and the programs accompanying, we don't use this big chance to bridge the gap. And we are, on the contrary, we are widening the gap by reallocating funding to other building segments. And even in it today amongst you, I don't think I need to repeat everything that I've been saying so far. And I mean that we need very serious, very big public effort to get out of the wrong paradigm, to shift the burden of property management to public resources. So what we now have with the Green Deal and the attitude of citizens, well, this probably gave us an opportunity to make this transformation. And I'd like to go back to the key message of Mariya Trifonova. Yes, for us, the reform in the energy sector, this is the transition, probably smooth, not dramatic transition, from the funding models that we know towards enhanced self-involvement and using private investment, depending on the target groups. Thank you. Well, the focus on public effort, well, this shows that there's public interest, there's public energy with regard to climate policies. Well, Martin Zaimov raised his hand. Thank you. I'd like to apologize in advance because many of you have heard what I'm going to say already, but we can see a quick change of public attitude, which is good news. And that's why I'd like to reiterate what I've said before. I believe that, and I think Dragomir will agree with me, one of the key things is to change our own understanding. And by saying changing our own understanding, I mean that the paradigms we live in, they are obsolete. And we are not making any effort, serious effort to change this, our understanding of authority, of the focus that we need to have on the end stakeholders, and these are the citizens. It's a long discussion, but I just want to add to the discussion that we had on the companies. And well, the Alpha research the survey, well, it focuses also on party affiliation, but this is useless for me. So first of all, we have to be aware of what we are talking about, and then we have to pay special attention to the people as people, not to institutions. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Martin. Well, again, you can ask questions in the chat or on Facebook, where we are streaming our discussion. And you can also use the raise hand option. Anton Gerunov raised his hand. Good morning. I hope you can hear me. If not, give me a sign. Can you introduce yourself? I am in a special situation. My name is Anton. This is not my usual situation. I have a PhD in economics, and I'm a managing director in an IT company, and also a consultant. I'm also an associate professor at the University of Sofia. So the initial question was first, why was I invited to this event by Mariya Trifonova? Well, I guess in order to be able to gather to discuss what we are doing, how we're doing it, and why. And if you allow me to make brief comments on these questions. Well, first, what are we doing? This is the key question for me. Very often when we talk about the Green Deal, well, people think of material things, well, smart grids, photovoltaics, water treatment plants, and so on and so forth. But from an economic perspective and the perspective of modern economy, what's important is not tangible things, but it's important to make our industry smart industries, to implement innovations that will make production greener, and think of business models that will make us more competitive, because tangible things will improve things like by 20%. But non-tangible things will give us the business models of the future. They will enable us to scale up so that we can increase manufacturing and margins 5 or 6 times. And this is the positive thing, and this is the big mental transition that we need to make, that we need first to reform our own mindset, how we look at the world and the economy, and then only then can we look at the physical assets if we need to do this. Second, how are we doing this? We often talk on a high level on abstraction, green model, circular economy. Circular economy will enable the full cycle of waste and of cost. But what we're doing practically is on a very low level. So what we need to do is on the level of the business process, look at different operations in a business process and to see how we can make each one of them green and digital. The big challenge is that now in Bulgaria, there are not enough people that can do this. Well, my company and I, we provide consultancy. We have solutions in digital transformation. And I can see that many of a large part of our technological sector is very good at working under some instructions. But the ability to define requirements ourselves and think of innovation and implement technology to be competitive, this is the next challenge ahead of us, the next task that we need to overcome. And finally, I will just say one sentence. Now, why are we doing this? The implementation of all these new technologies, making economy greener, decarbonized. Well, this will have a huge social and economic effect. Often we rush to do this without doing an impact assessment, without knowing the benefit, the cost, long-term, short-term. We don't know what will be on the level of an individual company, what will be on the level of the whole society. So this question, what the benefits and costs are, this is the third topic that we need to discuss, because we know we are moving forward, and we can see benefits that outweigh the cost. If we can see this, this will give us confidence whether we want to implement new production, new technologies, or just retrofit buildings. So this is the third big topic for me. And since I can see that there's a wide range of experts now on this roundtable, probably we should think of some topics, the interdisciplinary topics that we can all work at, so we can make this real, not just on paper. This was my brief comment. Thank you, Anton. This was a very timely intervention. And your mention of this interdisciplinary approach is very important. We need to really stick to it when it comes to such a complex topic. And I would like to give the floor to Mariya to answer Martin's question. And meanwhile, we had another question: how much of this 3 billion level for waters, for enhancing the quality of water, will be used for irrigation? Well, 800, a total of 48 million, I think. But this can change. This is the answer to the question. And of course, with 800, sorry, it's 848 million. But of course, we can talk about how policies, how money can be used as a leverage for investment. And one more question: what price should Bulgarian farmers pay to achieve the goals of the Green Deal? I don't have an answer to this. Well, please clarify your question and I will answer it.
Martin Zaimov is asking another question. What do you mean by socio-economic problems? I give the floor to Mariya Trifonova, who first used this term. I understand two things from these questions. Initially, and I believe I already talked about this, every change in the economy reflects on our social life. So these processes should be studied, forecasted, and manage their impact. I would like to emphasize that we are speaking about new technology all the time, about a change in the economic model, about a new way to do business, about new business models. This is all very good, but it will not be enough for us to reach the final goal, decarbonization, unless we manage to stimulate a change in the consumer behavior. This is evidenced by numerous pieces of research. This is characteristic of the transport sector, of the energy sector, and other sectors with energy efficiency and everything. So we should not forget that the consumer model and consumer behavior is very important. Thank you, Mariya. Vessela, let me add to what was mentioned about the motivation behind this survey. It made sense to make it because on the one hand, we wanted to show to what degree is there a difference between political behavior and public attitudes, because we are evidencing a huge divide. Why is this important? Because on the one hand, Bulgaria should return its adjusted position on the Green Deal to explain in which areas it wants to um, make more effort and how the Bulgarian government will attract private capital to the 12 billions that the EU will provide to Bulgaria. This exercise will not happen in anybody's office. It needs to happen firstly with a debate, not only with society as a whole, but with the individual sectors, including the agricultural sector, the digital services sector, including urbanists, including people who are in transport, so that this plan has its internal coherence. And I believe we have all grounds to believe so, observing public expectations and public attitudes. The fact is that the politicians haven't made this effort so far. This is not only a political effort, but also intellectual effort. It requires work. For me, as a person who is not an expert in this sphere, this is rather surprising. Thank you. This was a very exact observation and acute one. The difference between the leaders and the electorate is very interesting in this survey because it turns out that the electorate are further ahead than their leaders. That is to say, the political leaders are lagging behind from society. And this is an interesting phenomenon, both as regards the topic of climate issues and as regards the policies to overcome climate change nationally, but also internationally and in the EU. Speaking of climate diplomacy and so on, I hope that we go back to this question again. Natalia Dimitrova has the floor. In the meantime, you can reply to the questions in the chat. There is another question in the chat from Martin Zaimov. He can be replied to in the chat itself. Natalia. Hello, colleagues. I hope that we can hear me. I'm sorry you cannot see me. I must be having a problem with my camera. I'm sorry, I have a technical issue, but I hope I can continue with my statement. My name is Natalia Dimitrova, and I'm a chair of the management board of an NGO, Blue Link Foundation, and I had a part of the so-called climate portfolio projects of our organization. One of these is an overview of the Bulgarian Recovery and Resilience Plan and comparing it to 3 similar plans by 3 other member states. So whenever we are ready with our analysis, we'll gladly share it in a similar format later in the year. My statement, however, has another focus. So far, from the review of the Bulgarian resilience and recovery plan, which is one of the main pillars of the Green Deal, we weren't sure whether our politicians who wrote the October draft and the subsequent draft have made research at the lowest level. Users and beneficiaries of this plan, namely citizens through the civil organizations, municipalities, and educational institutions at the school level. In our view, these three very important groups for the realization of the priorities and goals of the Green Deal are almost not present in our national resilience and recovery plan. Now we are making an overview of the Latvia, Slovakia, and Portugal's plans to see whether these three groups have been consulted and are present as beneficiaries and users of this plan. But in Bulgaria, they are missing. And in fact, we even have very good practices in Bulgaria. What do you mean they are missing in Bulgaria? What do you mean they are missing in Bulgaria? You mentioned the schools, for example. Well, schools and NGOs are very important in their role in promoting, informing, educating society, the younger generation about these issues. Currently, the main users and beneficiaries are huge state-owned structures with projects for hundreds of millions. And mainly the state will take advantage of these funds for promotion of the priorities of the Green Deal. The national recovery and resilience plan are missing. So I'm saying that this group, NGOs and schools, should be more integrated in the completion of the plan because it has not been completed yet. By the 30th of April, it should be tabled, but it should be adopted by the 30th of June. So there is a window of opportunity for it to be amended. Another major target group which is missing are municipalities. I can see that there are representatives from the Association of Bulgarian Municipalities here. At the municipal level, we see very good municipal programs and plans related to the implementation of the goals of the Green Deal. I can give an example. I'm from Blagoevgrad and I have direct observation over the air quality plan and the plan for development of renewables in Blagoevgrad. There are very good measures which provide direct support for achieving the carbon neutrality, reducing the air pollution, and preserving the health of the population through early warnings. However, these measures sound all too good, but they are not supported by financing, and this financing will not come from the municipal budgets, not from the operational programs of the EU. However, I think that this was a good moment for such initiatives to be supported through the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. We shouldn't just spend 3 billion for building rehabilitation. This is a good measure, but it is isolated in its effect. So we should be looking for a diversity of measures at the local level, which would contribute for the achievement of the goals of these European documents. And people, municipalities, NGOs at the lowest levels should always be consulted in order for the Green Deal to go forward. Otherwise, this will just remain something written on paper, mentioned from time to time in political debates and discussions. Thank you. This is what I wanted to say. Let me turn your attention to the fact that a huge amount will be provided to schools. It's another question whether this is reasonable. And this is for rehabilitation, for insulation and re-equipment of rooms. How can schools be involved in the drafting of a national development plan, which has to be drawn up in 3 months? I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you for your intervention. I'd like to hear from Magi Maleva, because we are speaking a lot about the public perception, public attitudes to climate change. This is an issue we have often discussed with Magi Maleva. Magi is from Gorichka and is the only person I know who has beat Serena Williams and Boyko Borisov in tennis. I will say a few things. About 18 years ago, 18 months ago, 18 months ago, I was desperate because of the climate crisis, and I gathered about 10 people at home. Julian was among the people invited, but he didn't come. And since then, we decided we would meet every month. Since then, we have had about 40 meetings. And this group was called Climate Activists Anonymous. We had a conversation about who we are, what we're about to do. 1 year later, we started generating ideas, and all of these ideas are related to what we are speaking about here today. Things that we started doing in practice are the following. Starting from yesterday, we are launching a climate vote campaign. You can follow it in Gorichka. The idea is, we didn't know about the survey presented today, but the idea of our campaign was, without stigmatizing any of the political parties and offending them, to find where are the people who have heard about the climate and what solution they might offer on these 5 key topics: climate, agriculture, just transition, urbanization, and education. The whole group, led by 4 people, started this campaign. There were 5 questions in this campaign. There are 5 people from the group who answered the questions, and now we're looking for people to answer our questions from the parties. If you can assist me in reaching to GERB, I'll be grateful, because they haven't replied so far. Starting from the 23rd, we will launch another project. This is a wagon that we equipped, and we have an arrangement with 50 schools that this wagon will talk about the link between the forest and climate. These are just 2 of our projects. This group that I was talking about is very valuable because we have various people with different ideas in this group, from the left or right political spectrum, libertarians, and so on. This shows that the climate issue cannot be resolved by just one single group of people. It should be resolved by all political parties. It should be resolved by small players, large players. I'm very happy when somebody tells me we should educate students and children, but I think that we should also educate grown-ups, because we all should make a difference between air pollution and CO2 emissions. Not many people know the difference between these. So I believe that our generation of the 40 plus people need to make this huge transformation happen, because our children will not have a choice. There is not enough time for them. So we have to stop talking about educating children and start talking about educating adults as well about this topic. I would very much like to continue talking about the Green Deal, because people need to understand why it makes sense to have this Green Deal. And for the future, I hope that this survey will lend us more courage that we are moving in the right direction. So if anybody would like to join us in our climate group, you're welcome. There are at least 6 people here.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you for this information, and I hope with this wagon you will get feedback from schools, so that, like Natalia said, there's not enough connection and communication with schools, with children. So this is a way to hear from the school children, and this will be very, very interesting. And like you said, we should not educate children. We should first of all educate ourselves. Well, thank you. There's a question that came through Facebook from Aneta Bozidarova under this plan for resilience and recovery. There's over 200 million euros for digitalization. How is this going to be spent? Oh, this is not the topic of today's conversation, but in the course of the discussion, if you have, if you can answer this, I'll be grateful. Martin raised a hand, but then lowered it. I don't know. No, I didn't. I didn't mean to do this, to raise a hand. But yes, I agree. We should first educate ourselves. Thank you. I can see that Atanas Gurgiev is with us. Let's hear from him. He's the Dean of the Faculty of Economics at the University of Sofia. Now in the Bulgarian channel, hope you can hear me. I'm very happy to be at this event because it's very important. I'd like to thank Mariya Trifonova. She is part of our team at the Faculty of Economics. Well, talking about the policies, well, we will continue to be active in studying the effects, and we will offer expert assistance. Well, I myself I'm not an expert on the topics that Mariya presented. I an expert in energy, markets, services, regulations, related more to the traditional part of the energy sector. But the Faculty of Economics is working actively on today's topic, and we're going to develop new partnerships to contribute to the efforts towards digitalization. And we're open to new contacts, partnerships, with all participants at this meeting today. And the most topical issues relate to changing the public attitude, the mindset in the society in general, and also individually in the context that we're going to work in the next 10 years. I was part of another discussion, and a few days ago, and I'm very happy that you mentioned children, and also how can we make every and each one of us think in the context of our carbon footprint, and think in more concrete terms, in terms of prices, categories. And this is part of our mission, working with future managers, they need to have a new way of thinking. So this is from me. Well, thank you. This was very spot on. Just one question. Do you think there's a difference between public perception and expectations in terms of the climate policies, and what we can see in the programs and the election campaign? On the one hand, yes, you can see the difference. But on the other hand, whenever we read political platforms, we need to know that things usually turn out in a very different way in practice. And also, even when citizens say that this topic is important for them, we cannot be confident whether they refer to the same conceptual framework, and they what those topics mean for them individually. We all want to have something better, something greener, but the question is whether we are aware what this means for our personal well-being, for our personal choices, and what we personally need to do. So we generally are for something greener, but the question is what each of us has to do in order to achieve it. Thank you. Georgi Stefanov wanted the floor. Well, going back to the focus of today's discussion, the results from the survey of Alpha Research, I'd like to share something through my own perspective. When I started working on this topic back in 2007, there were 3 representatives from the Ministry of the Environment and just 2 academics from the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences. There were no other experts. And since 2008, WWF does sociological service every 2 years. And recently I looked at the data from 12 years ago. And I should say that in 12 years' time, we had tenfold increase, but this is due to global processes, but to me it is due to the fact that people started feeling the negative impact of climate change in their own lives. So like halfway through this period, we gathered scientists, academics, experts, citizens. They described what they could see through their eyes in terms of climate change, and we were soon to release a new sociological survey. And one of the questions is what are the causes? What human activities cause climate change? And the answers are very interesting. And we have some provocative questions like nuclear energy and others. So I think people already know where the issue stems from and what the natural solutions are, and what will be the economic benefits. So some said that we should be thinking why our leaders, those that govern us, they just ignore the topic. Well, at the beginning of the election debate on BTV, the other day, they discussed the Green Deal, and we heard very interesting discrepancies, I believe. So if you read the positions of the Green Deal, they're not public documents. I mean, the governmental position, the one from February and the one from November last year, you can see that the Bulgarian government thinks in a very different way compared to the data we could hear about today. Eurobarometer, other organizations, they also have made surveys. And Maggie Malev mentioned that GERB don't want to share their position, and other parties, they as well, they don't want to talk about this. But and do you think this is a result of lack of knowledge? And well, let's set aside the heated debate on the Green Deal, because when we mention the Green Deal, we're saying, okay, we're going to be given some money, or some money will be taken away from us. So what is the reason why this is not being discussed on the high political level? Well, I think because of lack of knowledge. I've been communicating with such people for 7 or 8 years. Well, people are just not informed. I remember an initiative of Gorichka a few years ago. They sent a film by Al Gore, but they this was not actually, this initiative was not well understood, again because of lack of knowledge. And so we have to convince those people. Well, they said, okay, we support what we're doing, but we have to really push for this, despite the proclamations made by some political parties. Well, the question about climate change and climate policies, this is directly related to how this will to the energy industry, and how this will affect the energy industry. So I would like to turn the floor to Rumiana Grozova. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm now in the street. Careful with the traffic lights. Stop when it's red. Well, I hope I won't. The question is whether this survey has covered the city of Stara Zagora, because I should say that now this discussion is much more active than compared to 1 or 2 years ago. But actually, the first association of the Green Deal is the shutting down of coal-fired power plants, and my colleagues and I are really trying to raise more awareness. So I'd be happy to hear about the perceptions in the city of Stara Zagora, because this attitude will really will exacerbate in the run-up to the elections, because we're talking about voters, and nobody can irresponsibly say that the coal-fired plants will work until the year 3000. Vessela, first of all, I'd like to say that we don't have data about concrete cities because it's a national survey. And we have a representative sample, national sample. It contains 1,000 people from different cities. Well, for sure, there are people from the region of Stara Zagora, but we don't know how many they are. And but they're not enough, as many as they are. They're not enough to be representative. We should highlight here that indeed people have already understood that coal-fired power plants need to shut down. And this is not a topic on a national level, I would reiterate, looks politically explosive, like a trap or a threat to a constructive debate on the Green Deal. So the question is now more about the alternatives. Thank you. So we are out of time now, but Vessela said we can continue for another 30 minutes. If you're busy, well, don't worry, just go and we will continue. Well, I think we should cover two things. One is about the municipalities. We have representatives of the National Association of Municipalities. This is Slava or somebody else? Do you want to take the floor? The municipalities are listening silently. Kaloyan Stakov, meanwhile. Hello, and thank you for the invitation. This was a very interesting discussion. I'd like to take back the discussion to some practical issues because we've been talking about opportunities, risks, perceptions, but this depends on some practical things. First of all, the green transition is a big opportunity that is difficult to quantify. To me, this is something that will have a similar effect like computers, the spread of computers in our daily lives, and business services will change to such an extent that we cannot, actually we didn't think it would be like this back in the 90s. But this has a risk as well because some countries will take more advantage than others. And maybe we will take less advantage, but maybe we'll take more, we don't know. But then this will have an effect on the economic and social life. And the other important thing is talking about policies. They're very important, I think, and what I can't see is that we don't have any concrete policies. Like politicians say, we have natural gas, we'll have solar panels, no coal, like this, things like this. But after all, this is a goal. It's very important how we will reach this goal. And I'm saying this is very important because wrong policies can have the reverse effect, the opposite effect, like it happened with the renewables power plants after 2012. So there was a big backlash on the part of the society, And since 2012, there hasn't been any serious developments. And only recently did we start to install some small solar stations, but just on a small scale. So the spread their spread into our social economic life is much weaker. And the same could happen with the future policies. So we have to be very careful and do it wisely, but because do not forget that we are catching up with other countries. We're not in a position like Germany, Norway and Sweden, Denmark. So this all has to be in line with our capacity.
On the one hand, we shouldn't have to rush, but at the same time, we need to maintain a good speed because the hugest cost will be in 2024 and even more in 2025, 26 if we start not now but later, the effect will be even more delayed and things will be different then. So if there are politicians who come to power with the argument first we'll make analysis and then we'll make policies, then this will not be a working mechanism. Analysis have been done since 2012. We know what the issues are. We know how the industry is developing. So things in the energy sphere are clear. The question is what the change will be, and this is where the focus should be on the political level. And I would rather disagree with Georgi that politicians don't read at the highest levels. The problem is that it's very hard to resolve these issues. How can we at the same time implement new ideas but transform coal areas and meet the requirements of the industry and not having the prices for the consumers increase? People will protest. It's not easy for a politician to take these complex decisions, so they decide not to deal with these hard issues. And the last thing I'd like to turn your attention to is a topic that nobody's speaking about, although it was mentioned in 2015. This is energy poverty. It is important for the energy transition, for the green transition and the liberalization of energy markets in the country. But these topics hide huge risks because so far they were used as an argument to put a halt to reform. They would say, we're a poor nation. If we implement reforms, they will result in higher prices and reforms would halt. But at the same time, on the other side, we hear other arguments. Yes, there is energy poverty, but how can we overcome it? Well, it's hard to say because we don't know where it is, how it is structured. Shortly, let me give you an example from England, because this is where the term originally came from. Initially, they made an analysis between uh, the income and energy poverty. And there were different tools to support households. 10 years later, the government decided they would make another analysis. And the first part of the new analysis is to check once again whether there is a gap between energy poverty and poverty in general. And this is the foundation they were using. I have made an analysis of energy poverty, and in Bulgaria, we have a huge overlap between poverty in general and energy poverty. So even if we have energy poverty, it is a small share. The problem is that official income is low in Bulgaria. So before we start working to resolve these issues, we should start with uh, a consistent approach to see whether we have energy poverty, where it is, what the problem is, because having to resolve poverty in general is a different task than resolving energy poverty. Thank you for speaking about energy poverty. I can share my impression that in the recovery and resilience plan, finally, energy poverty in the second version of this plan, we had talks about this topic. I can see that the politicians are starting to talk about this issue, having reviewed their political programs. In the local elections, we tried to raise this issue and, in fact, helped a lot about this in this regard. And something that I noticed is that the prospective mayors didn't want to engage with this issue. They didn't want to turn this into their issue. Yes, there is energy poverty, they would say, but this is not something we can handle or we should handle. This topic at least emerged to the surface, and I hope very much that what you're talking about, the difference between energy poverty and poverty in general, will be clarified, because finally it emerged on the scene of the political debate. There are many different ways to measure this energy poverty and to overcome it. Whether we can overcome it, to what extent, and so on. Stulko Apostolov wanted to take the floor. He's from BioUniverse, Vessela. Are you here, Stulko? Yes. My name is Stulko Apostolov. I have been developing bioagriculture since '96, shortening the supply chains in the sphere of food production and agriculture. I'd like to share my impression on what is happening in the sector of agriculture and food in the context of the Green Deal. It was very good news for us to hear that since Bulgaria has been a member of the EU, the European Commission introduced quantitative indicators, and whenever a country would write their plans, it would include these indicators. Until this moment, this was something voluntarily, something optional, but now we have fixed indicators which should be put in place in the plans. They are fixed for the EU in general, not for each and every member state. One of the indicators is to have 50% decline in the use of pesticides in agriculture by 2030, increase in the bioagricultural lands. They should be 25% of the arable land until 2050, 50% decrease in the antimicrobial uh, uh, substances, and decrease of the use of antibiotics, which is good news. It's good to have something measurable. And let me tell you what is happening, because I'm a member of the task group for producing the new strategic plan for the agriculture in Bulgaria. In my opinion, the same is happening now as used to be happening in 1985. We used to think that this is something temporary. This is just a directive that we could try to dispose later with a delay, or with just something superficial. I would not like to say that the reason is just in the those in power. This is the opinion of the people who are involved in agriculture in general. And unfortunately, this is what the situation is. One of the tools which the European Commission is offering is eco schemes, 25 to 30% of the payments to people involved in agriculture will receive funds for this transition towards greener agricultural production. Unfortunately, things are not moving in the right direction. Our government will propose eco schemes to diversify the production with a third or fourth crop, but nobody knows how we can achieve the indicators about decreasing the use of pesticides, decreasing the use of pesticides in animal farming. We are not having this discussion, unfortunately. Unlike the people in France who keep the conversation going, in Bulgaria, everything boils down to measures which are signed in advance, and then we discuss them. Some people are for, some people are against them, and this is how we end the debate. We should keep talking about these indicators. We should say, as a member state, what part of these indicators we're able to achieve, what percentage of Bulgarian agriculture will be bio in 10 years' time. We should have our own national target. What part of the pesticides will be reduced? And we're doing something quite the opposite. According to the latest statistics for the past 4 years, the sale rather of pesticides has been increased fourfold for the past few years. And our target is to decrease them by 50%. Instead of increasing bioagriculture, it has been decreasing just for the past year. From 2018 to 2019, it has decreased by 10%. It's a very concerning report about antibiotics in animal farming. People have their motivation to use antibiotic, for example, different diseases from Africa and so on. So it's not a rosy picture. And another important thing, the sector of agriculture and food should have the consumers as stakeholders because they're one of the main stakeholders in the decision making. It's not only agricultural farmers or municipalities or religious leaders. We as consumers are very important. We are 7 million. If the effect from closing down the mines in Stara Zagora will affect 140,000 people, the effect on a change in agriculture and food production will affect 7 million people because we eat every day. So consumers should have the word when we discuss how to deal with the agriculture. Agriculture indeed lags behind in the discussions when we talk about the Green Deal. What can we do so that the topic of agriculture takes its place it deserves? 1/4 of the CO2 emissions are generated from agriculture, on top of all the issues raised about pesticides, antibiotics. Let me not even mention the economic dimension of the development of agriculture and the demographics, the depopulation of different areas. What can we do so that this issue occupies pride of place in the public debate and in the political debate? I don't have an answer. From experience, I can say that when we speak about agriculture, only a small circle of people are interested. But when we speak about food, more people are interested, including the media are interested. So for me, it's always good for agriculture and food to go hand in hand as a package of economic business activities because they're very closely interrelated. When we speak about agriculture, we should always say agriculture and food in order for more people to be interested in this topic. Otherwise, not more than 10 people, 10% of the population will be interested in this topic. Can I also chip in? Maggie, you wanted the floor. I have known Stilko for 15 years now. We started together our projects in Harmonica and Biozemede. And when we started meeting with this group of environmental enthusiasts, we knew that it's much easier to find the right answers with regard to the energy, but following the IPCC report 3 years ago, it turned out that the agriculture contributes a lot about the CO2 emissions. The world is looking for solutions. They are not easy solutions. We don't know which is the right kind of agriculture. There are such surveys underway now, but a key problem is that Bulgaria does not have the expertise for this. Probably Stulko knows, and a few other people know, but in general, not many people know what should be done in Bulgaria. For this topic to enter the public domain, something should be done. Not many people recognize there is a problem, so we should talk more about this. The agricultural topic is not in the center of discussion. And I believe there are not many people who know what has to be done about this.
Thank you. Thank you. I would urge you to organize an educational meeting and invite me. Yes, we're now thinking about organizing an agricultural debate, but we want to have it in person, not in Zoom, but make it in Zoom so people can participate. And I remember a recent conversation when we were preparing for a Zoom conference, there were some issues, and one of the interpreters said, don't worry about the issues. It's virtual, it's more human, things are more human. Can I answer the questions in the chat? Yes. Well, we are drawing to close. This question came on Facebook. Why the agricultural development program is replaced by a plan? Well, this is because of the European regulation, the European regulations. So we don't have time to go into to details. Well, we don't have time to give the floor to each of you. But if you think there's something really pressing, I don't see any raised hands. So I will say a few words in conclusion and then pass on to Vessela and Mariya. First, as a moderator, I'd like to thank all of you today for participating, for actively being engaged with this topic. It's a comprehensive topic, and we focused on many concrete issues related to the Green Deal, the policies, how they operate, energy, economy, energy poverty, agriculture. And it's good that we talked about companies, the difference between them, and how they will position themselves in competitiveness, because the whole idea of the Green Deal is very often presented as a blow against companies. Um, so it's an ongoing debate. One of the clear things is the difference between problems, engagement, and also the lack of problems, lack of the lack of those issues and engagement in the political platforms. And well, there was some assumptions that this results from lack of knowledge, lack of awareness. But you know that especially before elections, political parties do a lot of research. They want to see who wants to hear what. So it's still an open question why many of the topics we discussed today are not covered, sufficiently covered in the political programs. Uh, and well, the election campaign has not officially started yet for and probably we'll hear some opposing and conflicting positions in the real debate in the course of the election campaign. And this is going to be a good development. We couldn't hear enough from the municipalities. Well, I hope that in future debates this will be a topic. And also another important dimension of climate change that Vessela mentioned at the beginning. This is climate diplomacy and international issues. At the moment, John Kerry uh, is visiting Europe as a climate ambassador of the US president. Um, at the same time, Russia is seriously committed to the issue of climate policies. Turkey, all the neighboring countries, and the goals for climate neutrality that set by some of the economies for 2050. Well, this opens up a new topic that is very close to the heart of ECFR because it relates to the whole geopolitics of climate, and this relates to Bulgaria as well. Is it part of the Bulgarian foreign policy, the issue of climate? Yes, indeed, we have delegated this topic in a sense to the European Commission, European Union, but is it enough to get rid of it by delegating it to the European Union, or should we be committed as a country? So I'd like to conclude with this, and over to Vessela. Thank you, Julian. Thank you for the brilliant moderation. I'd like to thank all of you who participated in today's event. Well, the issue of the geopolitics of the Green Deal, well, I'm not going to talk about it, but for Bulgaria, it's important. If, for example, there is a carbon tax, how this will affect our competitiveness, our trade with the neighboring countries, or with our trading partners. So this is really a part of the everyday work of the foreign ministry, I should say. But today we wanted to discuss how Bulgaria should look into its own plans in relation to the Green Deal. And this is still an open question. And I'd like to extend an invitation to you. We're going to organize a second meeting after the elections. And the idea will be to talk about policies in more concrete terms. And let's try if those if the some government officials have time for this, and if they can commit to some political decisions, well, I hope we can reach some concrete proposals. I'm saying this because with some of you, like Joro and others, during the Bulgarian presidency of the Council of the EU, we organized a coalition of NGOs, and there were over 50 NGOs. And then only then some of our proposals heard, and I think this is the way forward on this topic as well. And we should be open as possible in this coalition. So that's why I'm very grateful that you accepted the invitation and participated in the discussion. And for us, this is a beginning, and we'll be happy to continue this together with you. So this is from us. Mariya, do you want to say something, or we are ready to go?
We will continue to talk on the topic. There will be individual conversation with the stakeholders on the topic. I'm glad that we managed to unite different viewpoints today, and I look forward to having the next meeting like this. Can we have the presentation? Thank you in advance. We also thank you. Have a nice day. Take care.